So this is going to be a mixture between a conversation and a presentation. And so at some point we may get a little interactive, okay? So how are you guys doing today? Awesome. I love camp. Don't you just love camp? You know, you get to come and connect with people. You get to learn amazing new things. And so I'm hoping that this time that we spend together, you guys are going to be opened up to new ideas, new possibilities, new ways of seeing yourself differently as a personal brand, as well as new ways of envisioning the company or the business that you may currently be responsible for helping to transform. So that being said, like Haj said, I am the founder of a company called BurnBright LifeWorks that strictly focuses on helping individuals, businesses, and communities reach their full potential. And that's really about products and services and guidelines and strategies that really empower people to see themselves as possibility and to act upon that. Because it's not just about the visions and the dreams, it's also about action. And it's also about ideas. This notion of illumination. The way in which when we get that spark of inspiration, it causes us to see things differently. And so the work that I do is primarily focused on sparking inspiration and then being the guide to help to implement the strategy. So I know many of you are here to transform your business. How many of you guys are here to transform your business or about business transformation? Okay. And how many of you are about personal transformation? Okay, so a little bit of overlap there. And I would say that the individual that is seeking to transform their business at first has to go through that process of transforming themselves. So you're in the right place. So when we think about this notion of transforming your business, it is about also transforming the way you think. Because what happens in here is what ends up coming out there. And so if we want to actually create transformation results in our business, we have to start to see the way in which our business operates completely different. And what I want to suggest or invite you guys to think about is your business as a dream. So if we think about everything that is here in this theater that we're sitting in today, the chairs, the floor, the fact of it even being built itself, it all started off as a dream, as a possibility. But a lot of times when we actually go about operating our businesses or thinking about our own personal brands, we're not actually in touch with the fact that we're actually in the process of making dreams come to life, making things real. We have this vision of the sole entrepreneur, that person who has the light bulb, Zuckerberg, right? I have an idea and it's about me sitting there with this idea, inviting other people in, being able to make something of that idea. But the way in which that idea becomes that figment of your imagination, if you will, and then actually becomes something that can take wings and fly, it really involves a lot, we know that. It involves collaboration, it involves a little bit of invitation in terms of getting people to really believe in your idea and what you want to bring to life. There's a lot of components that are called forth when you are trying to take an idea and move it forward. And what we're talking about and what we, as what I call dream activists, people who work in and outside of corporations, in communities, are really passionate about is this notion of a new archetype called the dream runner. And it's not just about being that sole entrepreneur who has the idea and it's about my idea. It's really about the way in which that idea itself becomes real, no longer about this, just the imagination, but it's in your hands and you're moving forward with it. And the sparks of inspiration themselves, the sparks of inspiration are actually positively affecting society. And so as Haj said, we're going to talk about transformation today, and particularly transformational brand strategies. And transformation itself is an art, and it's really all about a change or an alteration, usually something that is radical or drastic. How many of you guys have actually transformed a business? You've taken it from one place and moved it into another. You over here, how did you transform your business? So for those of us who may not have been able to hear, this notion of evolving something to somewhere where you never would have imagined that it would have ended up. And that is the process of transformation. We're not talking about change here. Change tends to be about more, better, greater than. It presupposes that there was something before that is just being improved on. When you talk about transformation, you're really talking about innovation. You're talking about invention. You're talking about taking something that you never could have imagined was present and actually inventing it. And that's what we're talking about here with transformation. In the same way an individual transforms, right? Think about Hillary and just her rise and how she's totally killing it, right? She's went from someone who we saw a certain way, and now it's almost unrecognizable who she is and how she operates. It's pretty magical. But it's also the same way a business transforms, as well as the way communities transform. So the art and the notion, the energy behind transformation is really the same, no matter which way you slice it. But it's all about what are you aiming that force towards. So there's this concept called the transformation economy. And Jess Greenwood at RGA did this talk, and in it, she kind of puts forth an idea about the transformation economy. And it's really about the exchange of cash for goods or services that could considerably improve the quality of life of the consumer who buys them for the long term. This slide, I think, is pretty powerful because what we see here is that we've moved from an industrial economy to an experience economy to one that was all about knowledge, and now that it's all about transformation. And what that really means is that the way in which brands are operating, I would even argue the way that we have to operate, has to be more systemic. It has to be more meaningful. It has to actually be able to work on more cylinders. It's not about a simplistic single solution. Your solutions have to be multi-pronged. They have to be taking into account the complexity of your audience as well as the complexity of the environment that your business or that you as an individual are operating within. And so that's really important when you start to think about this notion of transformation. And the more advanced that we become, the more we start to become aware of the value of transformation. It's not just about an exchange of, a transaction. I pay you a certain amount of money, you provide me a certain kind of experience or value. It's really about how are you actually helping me to create long-term, lasting change in my life and in my, in the world that I want to see out there. And the reason why this is so important is because this mighty dollar that is always being used, at least in the American context, now needs to operate like this. And you're starting to see the ways in which brands are starting to operate in terms of more of a gifting mindset. What can we give? How do we actually make a contribution to the people that we want to serve? How do we actually change and transform the lives of our employees? And so this is a whole different kind of paradigm that we're thinking about. And so if we look at the Starbucks example, you may start off with just coffee beans, right? And then you move on into this idea of it's more of a product, right? You purchase the coffee. Then it's about, just pouring a coffee, the difference between the corner coffee spot and Starbucks. Starbucks is providing you an experience. But that's not just it anymore. It's not just about you walking into a third space. You walking into a place where you feel like, wow, I'm really having this amazing experience that I'm willing to pay more for. It's about what is a long-term value of that experience. How do I feel about the way in which that particular business is actually inviting me and my community in to move forward in a way that actually is meaningful to us. And so in the transformation economy, this idea of businesses will need to connect to their audiences, again, long-term customer relationships. It's not just about a transaction. It really is about an actual experience where we are in a relationship with one another. And it's a full transformative process. And that means that choice itself, because at the end of the day, every time we vote, we're voting with our dollar. We're making a choice. And the choices now, because obviously there's a lot of challenges that ensue with our financial situation, the choices that we're making are now being influenced by the long-term value of that experience that we're actually engaging in. And it's all about how can it actually transform me for the better. So I believe this is a huge opportunity for brands that get it, for individuals that want to operate from a transformational perspective to do something really powerful. And I believe that there are keys out there that many different theorists, brand strategists are starting to put forward in terms of how do we actually operate within this transformation economy. And I would say for me, that key is really about transformational brand strategy. And what does it mean, transformational brand strategy? Transformational brand strategy is really about the series of strategic actions that you design into the way in which you operate your business that is about radically transforming its trajectory and enabling it not only to inspire and activate audiences, but also to create a deeper level of meaning and engagement and make that lasting contribution. So essentially, transformational brands are really seeking to ignite cultural change. And I'm going to give you a couple of different examples of what that means. So when we're talking about transformational and igniting change, we're talking about a transformation of a relationship. So there's meaning on one side. What does this actually mean for me to be a woman, for me to be a vegan? You know, what does it mean for me to be a student? And on the other side is, how is that brand interacting with me? What does that mean? It simply means that on one side we have this notion of aspirants, right? People who are aspiring to become something. I want to get skinnier. I want to get healthier. I want to be more dynamic with the way that I speak. I want to connect to people on a deeper level. And then you have the other side, which is the elicitor, the brand. The brand no longer operating as something that says, here, you pay me and I give you a transaction. The brand now is operating as what I call a transformation apparatus. It's a multi-pronged kind of platform that you actually connect to that actually empowers you to reach your full potential. And that's a way of being that brands are now really starting to understand. And you see that in this notion called, shared value. How many have actually seen this article that was published a couple of years ago in Harvard Business Review? Okay. So a couple of years ago, there was this article that talked about reinventing capitalism. And it basically said that we have to start to think about shared value in terms of what's good for business is also good for the consumer, the customer, the creator, the person, the inventor, because we have to also start to see different ways of how we look at what we used to call the customer or the consumer, And so creating shared value is all about finding new ways to not only shift the dynamic in terms of how you provide value, but also transforming your organization as well in the process. And for me, what I'm going to present to you guys today is really about this notion of inspired excellence, about the ways in which brands can take that notion of shared value and actually create excellent results that have inspiration built into it in terms of the way that you connect with your audience. And it's really a strategy, a method, a path that is helping promote a vision for growth that operates on multiple levels. I believe that there are 5 key transformational ways in which a brand can be more valuable and more meaningful in the world. The first one is purpose, being able to understand what is the purpose behind your actions and being able to organize and allow everything that you do to be guided around purpose. The second one is about curation, which is all about how are you actually, as a brand, being able to select the techniques that you're using. Which strategies are more meaningful? Is it a Twitter strategy? Is it about, really operating on Pinterest and making, inspirational vision boards on that platform? What are your values? What do you actually care about? And how is that being presented out in the world? And then honoring your uniqueness. What is that unique proposition that you're putting out into the world that honors not only who you are, but also your audience? And then finally, generosity. Because if we're not actually being generous in the way that we are engaging with our audiences, then there isn't that meaningful transformation that actually engages someone to continue to engage with your brand. So the first key, embracing purposeful intention. The second, surrounding yourself with inspiring source material. The third one, identifying and committing to your values. The fourth, honoring your uniqueness. And then the fifth, being generous with your walk and your work. Today, during Brand Camp, we're going to actually look at just 2 keys that I feel are relevant to what you guys are going to be doing within the world of innovation. The first one is about purpose. Embracing purposeful intention, and that's all about the ways in which brands organize their efforts around powerful principles and use it to solve problems and inspire intentional action. And the example that we want to talk about here is a brand that actually used that purpose to create possibility. And that's Dove. All of you guys are familiar with the Dove campaign for Real Beauty, correct? Okay. Now, what was it like when you first experienced that evolution campaign? Some words that we come to mind when we actually first saw. Who actually remembers that campaign that came out in 2004? Okay. One word. What was the experience like when you actually saw it? Surprised. Surprised. What else? Moving. What else? Relief. Why relief? You don't have to be perfect anymore. So what that campaign actually did was identify a problem that wasn't necessarily being communicated in that way before. The pressure that women felt to be perfect, right? This notion of beauty that isn't actually real. And the fact that the majority, I think at that time, the number was about 70% of women don't believe that they're beautiful. And so that came from a study that they did, and they realized that, wow, this campaign is really a global effort to change the dynamic around the purpose of, wanting to help women solve that problem, wanting to help the world, not just women, but helping to open up a conversation around this notion of beauty. They were able to actually have major transformational results in their business. And as a result of that, they continue to expand that campaign around that purpose of real beauty and really being able to say, okay, what does that mean as it relates to aging? Let's start to take on additional problems that are meaningful in the way that we actually look at how a brand can create value in the world. So this Dove campaign really was, at that time, was a trendsetter. It's an innovator. It was like a breath of fresh air. We heard that word relief, right? Dove challenged the industry to see women as they really are, beautiful and in their own unique way. I believe that there's another brand on a more local level that's doing something similar, but doing it around intersections. How many of you guys see that Walgreens commercial at the corner of happy and healthy? Well, now, what do you think of this? Somebody just gave the thumbs up, right? That itself is also a transformational brand strategy. Because to be at the corner of happy and healthy really speaks about a problem that many of us face in the world today. It's a challenge for us to, especially with Facebook, a lot of people know that fear of missing out and the pressures that are being created socially around Facebook and emotionally around Facebook, that's going to be even more of a challenge as we move forward in our world. But then this notion of happiness. Happiness itself is also a very important human endeavor, human desire. So they're positioning their brand at the corner of happy and healthy, saying that we are actually going to take on that purpose and provide you more solutions. So that's what we talk about when we mention transformational brand strategies. What we're seeking to do is to create something that actually helps to solve a problem and is purposeful and intentional and helps to create more meaning for the long term in people's lives. Is this making sense to you? Okay. So again, purpose, that's the first key, the purpose. Organizing around a power principle and using it to drive intentional action. So with a lot of my personal brand clients, we do this thing called master planning, where we identify the story that that person or that brand wants to kind of experience in their world. And then we chunk it into specific actions that will help to deliver on that overall strategy. And then we wrap it into a theme, which is the narrative that that person or that brand is now navigating and using to organize their lives. What that means in terms of Dove, what they did is they took that campaign for real beauty and they made it the organizational frame, the organizational strategy. And they were able to do powerful things as a result of having that single-minded intention and that purpose. So my invitation for all of you is that when you think about your own personal brands, as well as the brands that you're operating on, whether it's your own personal business or if it's you working at an agency, think about what story is being unfolded right now. And how am I acting in support of helping that? Or is there an opportunity for me to help that brand or help myself shift course? Because it really is all about purpose. The other key that I want to talk about today is generosity. And today there's many brands who are operating around this notion of generosity, but Tom's is very much at the forefront for the past couple of years in terms of being able to present that notion of what does it mean to create a new kind of paradigm for generosity, a new paradigm for giving. And that was really about their one-for-one strategy, right? And now they're doing it with other objects. So it started off with shoes, and then you have eyeglasses and a lot of other people doing a lot of interesting things in terms of if you buy one from us, we are going to give one to a country, a community, some area that is in need. Again, going back to that notion of problems, but being able to be generous with the way in which we're creating those solutions. And they also invented that whole One Day Without Shoes campaign, which was all about being able to drive it home into people's minds that what are the ramifications for us not supporting, not their initiative, but the fact that people are going out and not, I have no shoes on as well. So this idea of not being able to have shoes, what does that really mean? And being aware that it's different in different societies and different cultures. And the need for it, especially in the environment being what it is today. So that's really about generosity, and generosity is about sharing the journey, sharing the lessons, as well as sharing your product. So more and more, It's not enough for you to go behind that curtain and say, okay, I'm going to unveil my product when it's fully complete and ready. Today, a transformational brand wants to actually invite the audience in order for them to be able to move forward in that way. And so I believe that today brands have to take on purpose as well as think about the notion of what they're curating and what they're designing and be aware of what unique contribution they can make, as well as being able to be generous in the way that they think about value. And that's actually how we start to begin to create that transformed world. And soon, I imagine that there's going to come a time where it's going to be the order of the day, where it's going to be a world where we start to say, if you're not actually delivering value to me, long-lasting value, then I'm not going to vote for you with my dollars. So on the flip side, when it comes to who you are as an individual with your personal brand, or who you are with your, with the brand that you're actually responsible for servicing, it's really about that transformational component. And Haj mentioned that there's this holiday, this day of innovation that was created, and it's called the International Day for Dreamers. And we're doing it August 24th, is Dream Day. And what Dream Day is, it's really about, again, this notion of ideas, innovation. What can you do as an individual? What can you do as a business or as a community collectively in order to create the change that is necessary in the world? In 2012, it was really about people declaring their vision and identifying one action they could take to transform the world. And this time, it's exactly what we're talking about here today, innovation. How do we have the open invitation that each and every single one of us don't necessarily need to wait for innovation to operate at a high level, but that there's something that we can do at any level to create the change that we want to see. So I want to leave you with one powerful question as we think about the fact that everything here was at once, in one form or another, a dream. The question is, what's your dream? What are you moving forward with in your business? How are you moving forward and being a contribution, that notion of the dream runner? And I would love for you guys to tweet, to go on the website, check it out, email me, tweet at me at @DayForDreamers. I want to hear your dreams and we want to support them. So thank you.